What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so we've got some new legislation introduced by Ted Cruz. This is kind of fascinating, and I'm not sure exactly where I fall on this yet, but I think it's a pretty good idea. Let's get into it and see how my opinion evolves over the course of this news article. I've already read it once, but let's get into it a little bit more. I've had a little bit of time to think on it, so we'll get some good opinions on this and see where this falls out and see how this does. We'll try to follow this and stay with it. Check this out, y'all. Cruz introduces bill to use taxpayer funds to invest in savings accounts for U.S. children. Now, when I first heard that, I'm like, oh, come on, man. Taxpayer dollars. But when I thought about it, I read the article, I'm like, this actually ain't that bad of an idea. As a matter of fact, let's get into it. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas introduced a bill that would authorize the use of taxpayer funds to be used to invest in savings accounts for U.S. children. Cruz filed the Invest America Act, which would establish a private tax-advantaged account with a $1,000 seed investment from the federal government for every American child at birth. A version of the bill was included in the House Ways and Means Committee's budget package released on Monday. The Invest America Act will trigger fundamental and transformative changes for the financial security and personal freedoms of American citizens for generations, Cruz said. Every child in America will have private investment accounts that will compound over their lives, enhancing the prosperity and economic participation of the vast majority of Americans. When people, years from now, talk about the changes created by Republican efforts, this Congress, this is one of the landmark achievements they will talk about. Now, once again, like I said, I've been thinking about this a little bit. This actually isn't that bad of an idea. When you run the numbers, it's really not that bad. Now, currently, what we're running on a generational basis, if you will, right? Classically, I guess you could say, the generations run about 60 to 70 million Americans, right? Like the boomers were there were 90 million boomers out there. And then I think Gen X was about 70 million. Millennials were 60 million. However, Gen Z, they only have 40 million Gen Z out there. That's 40 million Gen Z. So Gen Alpha is almost certainly going to be lower than that. I don't know. I didn't run the numbers on Gen Alpha. It's hard to find the data on that, but the data for boomers, Gen X, and millennials and Gen Z, it's out there, but not really for Gen Alpha. But, you know, whenever this gets passed, that's going to be a whole different generation. It's not going to be Gen Alpha. It's going to be a different generation. But if you think about it, okay, so 40, let's just go with that number, right? 40 million. Okay, so if you run the numbers on that right quick, if we just estimate about 40 million, whatever generation they're going to call it, 40 million of these people times 1,000, that's $40 billion. That's not that bad. That's not that much out of pocket. And, you know, apparently that this is going to roll over until they're 18. Right, they're not going to be able to touch it until they're 18 years old. So look at the stock markets, how they increase over the years. That's going to be a pretty good investment for these people. They're going to have several $1,000s by the time that they turn 18, and whatever they do with it at that point. So I'm kind of leaning towards this is a pretty good idea. It's not a bad use of taxpayer dollars. This could go toward a lot of very poor, disadvantaged people out there. Help them get a car, whatever it may be, you know, get a new house, blah, 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 blah. You get it. It could give them that step that they need. Start a business, whatever, you know, whatever they want to do with it. Keep that money in there, for goodness sakes. Roll it over, pull out whatever capital gains you may have made, and leave that $1,000 in there and let it keep going, whatever that may be, you know. Plus, you know, the legislation you can add to it, whatever, you know, it's just an initial $1,000 seed. If your parents want to put some into it, build it up even further. I think this is a pretty good idea. And like I said, I'm kind of leaning towards this, but let's keep going and get the actual particulars of this. The bill would create an Invest America account and allow contributions to be made by individual family members, friends, and businesses of up to $5,000 annually. Account investments would be allowed to be placed in a broad, low-cost fund that tracks the S&P 500. It would be tax deferred until the child turns 18. distributions after age 18 would be taxed at the capital gains rate, according to the bill language. The bill was filed after Cruz introduced multiple bills to advance savings plans for Americans. Earlier this month, he introduced the Universal Savings Account Act to allow American families to save without the restrictions and penalties associated with traditional tax-advantaged accounts, the Center Square reported. A simple and accessible incentive savings plan will provide families with a way to establish financial security and prosperity, he said. This is fascinating, and I'm loving this right now. Like I said, I'm not keen on just giving handouts to people, once again, so I'm not fully on board with this, but I think it's a decent idea. It's not bad, right? This would have helped me out tremendously when I was, because my dad died and we were kind of broke. We were living off of Social Security from the time I was 12. So we were really broke, like seriously broke. Like I couldn't even, my mom couldn't buy me a car, nothing like that. I actually worked at Kroger and saved up my first, I think it was $1,100 for my first car, and it was a piece of junk. Yeah, that was back in the early 90s, and it was still a piece of junk. But I bought my own first car. That's how broke we were, and I had to save up for 2.5 years to get that much money. So it is what it is, right? But this would go to help out a lot of people, especially, like I said, disadvantaged people. So it's not that bad of an idea. Plus, like I said, you can add to it. The parents can add to it. You can get sponsors. Businesses can add to it. Whatever it may be. I think it's not a bad idea, but once again, I'm not too keen on handouts, so I would like to know a little bit more information than this news article says, and maybe I'll look into this and bring that information to you guys, but let's keep going with this, because this article has some very fascinating information about debt. Yes, very fascinating information about debt. Let's keep going. This is after he introduced a bill to expand tax-deferred education savings plans previously expanded under the first Trump administration, and another to create education savings accounts for military families, the Center Square reported. According to a 2024 Forbes survey, roughly 28% of Americans across 4 generations had less than $1,000 in personal savings last year, including emergency funds, non-workplace retirement accounts, and investments. As a result, many Americans are teetering on the edge of financial instability with little cushion to absorb unexpected expenses, Forbes wrote. According to data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, Americans saved 3.9% of their disposable personal income in March. Meanwhile, total household debt increased by $93 billion to reach $18.04 trillion in the fourth quarter of last year, according to Federal Reserve data. Aggregate delinquency rates increased. Mortgage balances increased by $11 billion to $12.61 trillion by the end of December. Auto loan balances also increased by $11 billion to $1.66 trillion in the fourth quarter. Credit card balances also increased by $45 billion from the previous quarter to reach $1.21 trillion at the end of December. Balances on home equity lines of credit increased by $9 billion, the 11th consecutive quarterly increase according to the data, with $396 billion in aggregate outstanding balances. Other balances, including retail cards and other consumer loans, increased by $8 billion. Student loan balances grew by $9 billion, totaling $1.62 trillion at the end of the fourth quarter, according to the data. According to a Tax Foundation analysis, over the long run, the most effective and sustainable way to improve financial security and upward mobility is through policies that lead to greater household savings and wealth accumulation at all levels of income. Policies that advance savings would greatly benefit low and middle income households, expand personal freedom and financial independence, the foundation argues. Yeah, it's very fascinating. Like I said, I'm kind of leaning towards this now, and I think it's a pretty good idea. And, I wish senators and congressmen would create more legislation like this, right? Like stuff that would work for American families, that at least make it look like they're trying to work for American families, trying to ease, finances, trying to ease debts and all that other stuff. But it is what it is. The government can only do so much. They can create laws that help people out in very, very specific ways. And, it is what it is. Republicans traditionally are like small government. But the government does serve a purpose, you guys. Like, it really does. Protecting us is the main purpose. And I would argue, right? Like protecting our borders and protecting us from foreign invaders, stuff like that. Local cops protecting us from criminals, because they do have those out there. That has to be what it is. That it's some fascism, if you will, to a certain extent, right? Like, we allow some authoritarianism. Like, everybody, I know people, they get out there and they yell and scream about fascists and authoritarianism and all this other stuff. But, a lot of people don't realize, what actual authority is. You know what I mean? Like, the government is not necessarily authoritarian outright. There are some authoritarian tendencies, right? So they force us to do certain things, but, it is what it is. But, like, true authority, right, is authority that, like, you want to do whatever it is, or somebody tells you and you just instinctively go do something, right? Like if you're walking down the road or something like that, somebody gets hit by a car, right? And say a doctor was walking by, he runs over, or just anybody, you don't know he's a doctor, just runs over and starts trying to do CPR and looks at you and says, hey, you come here, help me with this guy right quick, hold his head back or do whatever it may be, right? Most people will just jump right into action and go do whatever that guy says. That's authoritarianism, right? That's true authority right there. Like the government coming in and telling you you need to shut your mouth on social media or you're going to be arrested like they're doing in the UK. I'm sorry, that's just fascism, if you ask me. Just straight out fascism. But I think, like the government has a role to play, and so does the citizenry, right? Like, we are here to serve a purpose. So we need to be able to exist, co-equally with our government. So we can't have too many laws that restrict too much freedom from us. And, with legislation like this, I think that would allow a lot more people to have at least a little bit more economic freedom, if you will. Because think about that for a second. The stock market, just generally speaking, right, like the S&P 500, which this legislation would be based on, generally grows about 8 to 10% per year. So over an 18-year period, that $1,000 investment would increase by a pretty good bit, don't you think? That's not even to speak of any money you might add on top of that. I just find this all very, very fascinating, and I think there's some pretty good legislation. Like I said, I'm leaning towards it. If they go ahead and do it, I'm not going to be sad. That's for damn sure. That is for damn sure. But, it's a crazy world we're living in right now, y'all. It really, really is. And, the corporate press, they're lying, they're manipulating just about everything, so it's hard to take these news articles seriously unless we have all the data right there in front of us, which it's hard to get that data. But once again, folks, you got to go and find somebody that's going to take and compile data and put it all together and then give you that on a silver platter just to get what reality looks like. That's screwed up, y'all. But hey, look, I'm here. Y'all can get the news from me. That's what I do. So y'all make sure and stay tuned. Subscribe if you're new around here. And that's all I got on this one, by the way. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Like I said, subscribe if you're new around here. This is what we do. We take corporate press articles. I try to keep you guys informed as to what is going on in Congress and the Senate, the legislation. I try to keep that, up to date. So y'all stay tuned for all that. We cover politics a lot of Donald Trump, because they love to lie about Donald Trump a whole hell of a lot. I love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think down in the comment section, like I was saying. Love to hear any feedback, any ways you think I could improve my delivery, whatever it may be, the setting in the background, what news I cover. It doesn't matter. Y'all let me know what y'all think about anything and everything. How's my facial structure look? Do I look like an idiot? In other words, do I sound like I'm from Southwest Louisiana? Or do I sound like some sort of hick up here talking about, hey man, you need to come on down here, dadgum, and we need to have a couple beers and maybe have a barbecue party. You know what I'm trying to get at, right? We've got memberships too, so y'all sign up and join the channel. Look right below and click that button. We've got perks. As a matter of fact, I'm taking requests. You know, you have any recommendations, if you will, for perks for the memberships. Y'all let me know what y'all think about that as well. But I think that's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.